So what did Aristotle mean here? According to ChatGPT, he meant that working for wages consumes mental energy and prevents people from living the highest human life of contemplation, virtue, and political participation. I guess political participation would mean questioning the existing systems and examining other possibilities and not adapting to the systems that don't work. Basically, wage labor reduces human potential by trapping people in survival mode. My new favorite person, Jason Hickel, who's an American, but he works as a professor of economics, I think, at University in Barcelona. And he explains very well why we can't all be millionaires and why in capitalism, millionaires can only be a small elite.
What's great about the American dream is that we can all be millionaires, you know? This is so interesting to me because it's actually like, if we were all millionaires, none of us would be millionaires. Because what is the quality of being a millionaire? Is your ability to command labor, right? It's like, you talked about the country club and the yachts, et cetera. Like, someone's got to be building your yacht. Someone's got to be curating your country club.
Mowing the lawn,
bringing you your cocktails, right? If people are millionaires, if everyone's a millionaire, will they be doing that labor? No. Therefore, you will not have the benefits of being a millionaire. The success achieved by some is literally only success because there are other people that are subordinated to work for them, doing everything that they want, right? It can only ever be a few, which is why there's no society where everybody becomes elite. It just doesn't happen. It's always a small fraction of society. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is that a society we're willing to live in, where most people are subordinated to service the whims of elites, because that's the reality of having an elite class.
Right.
We're effectively, when you have an elite class, you're devoting your society's labor and energy and materials to servicing their desires, however perverted that might be. This is an irrational thing to be doing.
And it's objectively not good for the majority of people.
I'm not participating in that shit. I never accepted being a working class, but I don't want to be the capitalist class either. I mean, I'd rather be a capitalist, but I don't want to be exploited or exploit others. Just want to be a free human. I thought that I wouldn't look for a job anymore this year after having worked for 3 months without one day off at a very meaningful job of a live-in caregiver. For a very kind working class family. I really don't like this label, working class. So after 2 months of not working and not having any income, I recently started feeling that I do want a job, but definitely not a full-time job. Maybe unless if it's in design field, which is close to impossible for me to get at my age without a degree and any experience or an amazing portfolio. So during these 2 months, I made a few business plans and a website for my project, and I looked into financing options for new entrepreneurs. But in short, it's pretty disappointing because basically you have to figure out how to help yourself before anyone will help you. So yeah, I was considering a part-time job, not more than 4 hours a day or 2 days a week, but not considering it that strong enough to actually look for it. So instead of just applying for a shitty job, I decided to examine and question this restlessness and this wish to get a job. Can it be a sort of urge to escape from freedom or from responsibility? Isn't it wiser to work on my own projects and create my own income sources? Do I just want to be distracted from my real work that's creative and uses my talents? I even checked out job ads last week and I felt like vomiting. None of the positions that I've seen made me excited about a job. I could get excited about a job as a designer or animator, but I'm not even close of being able to get that kind of job. The competition among the working class, especially us without the special analytical computer-like Asperger brain is so huge that you need to be really good and preferably having done that one little thing your whole life. And I've seen ads when they require like 5 years of experience with software that has only existed for 3 years. And that's for a junior level position. This is a video that I rewatch whenever I am about to apply for a shitty job, which is most jobs, if you ask me. This is one of the most important living intellectuals, Noam Chomsky, and this is what he had to say about jobs.
Look, just think about it for a minute. Almost everybody spends most of their life living in a totalitarian system. It's called having a job. When you have a job, you're under total control of the masters of the enterprise. They determine what you wear, when you go to the bathroom, what you do. The very idea of a wage contract is selling yourself into servitude. These are private governments. They're more totalitarian than governments are.
But they can't legally murder you or imprison you.
They can't legally murder you, but they can control everything that you do. Okay?
Well, again, the right-wing libertarian argument would be, well, you're free to leave at any time.
Yes, you're free to starve. That's exactly right. You have a choice between starving or selling yourself to a tyranny. Very libertarian. The right-wing libertarians, whatever they believe, are actually deep authoritarians. They're calling for subordination to private tyrannies, the worst kind of tyrannies.
I know some jobs are better than this, but I'll resist for now. I need to get closer to bankruptcy before I make a desperate move like applying for a job. So successful artists that are any artist that can survive just doing art the way they want to do it, they know that your job is to do whatever your heart tells you to do. And if you don't like having a job, it's for a reason. It's your soul trying to be itself. Your body is trying to tell you, we're an artist. What are you doing applying for servitude? We're gonna waste our life. So is it the brainwash I've been exposed to as a working class? The indoctrination that I should be a productive servant? Why can't I just enjoy the contemplation and the practice and exercise of virtue instead of wanting to get my mind absorbed and degraded with paid employment, as Aristotle put it? Is it maybe lazy and cowardly to want to get a job? Is it because I don't have a family or a safety net if my projects don't start producing income before my savings run out? If I had some income source, I'm not sure that I would have any desire for a job, even part-time. I would maybe go to co-working spaces sometimes just to talk to people in breaks while working on my creative projects. I've been asking people lately about it and why we seem not to be able to fully enjoy our free time for longer periods, and why some people feel restless or guilty or lost if they are not employed by someone else. And would we feel that way if we had universal basic income? I understand some people who told me that they have children and they don't want to be spending all day with them, and they want to feel like a professional and not just a parent and a chef and a house cleaner. Some people have different issues at home and want to avoid personal problems by escaping to work. I can understand that. Work can be a sort of an escape. But even for those people, wouldn't it be better if you worked on your own projects instead of someone else's? Is there really a purpose in work? Does it have to be work for others and for most of the day? Do we have to, as creators, create stuff thinking about the clients, if they will like it and if they will want to buy it? I always thought if I make something that I really like, there must be enough people who also like it. That's been my logic, to be my own client persona. So working less, that's the subject of this video. Working less is not just good for our health and freedom, it's also good for the planet. And ecological economists that talk about the need for degrowth. And that's a very important concept. It's the only way to actually stop global warming and to save human life on this planet. And degrowth challenges the constant growth model of capitalism and wants to bring economies back into balance with the natural world and to reducing inequality, and at the same time while prioritizing well-being and social justice. So let's hear Jason again about it.
The things that degrowth calls for cannot happen within capitalism. It's antithetical to capitalism. And in fact, this is the reason why degrowth gets so much hate. It's interesting. I had a conversation with a leading figure of degrowth recently, and I was like, well, we actually should stop using the term because people hate it. And he was like, you have to understand, people don't hate it because it sounds negative. They hate it because they can see that it's anti-capitalist. They hate it because it's very apparent that this is against the interests of capital accumulation and, furthermore, requires democratic control over production and planning, right? Because you're going to have to plan the downscaling of some forms of production and the upscaling of others. This cannot occur under capitalism as we know it. And so that's why there's a backlash from the right. And so I think that given that fact, what we actually want to do is play into that terrain more directly. Like, let's rid ourselves of the confusion. This is really about class struggle. This is really about who controls the means of production.
Well, quite.
And so let's make the movement actually is socialism.
Yeah.
We have to build a movement for socialism that has the possibility of taking power and overcoming capitalist control of production, asserting democratic control over our own productive capacities so that we can address our social and ecological crises. That's the movement. That's the objective. I think that degrowth is properly understood as a piece of socialist transformation that applies specifically to rich countries. And again, I think one of the major misunderstandings of degrowth, and this is another reason why it triggers so much anger, is that people immediately think, oh, this is about denying development to the global south. No, it is fundamentally the opposite of that. It is specifically targeted at those nations that dramatically overshoot their planetary boundaries and have to reduce material and energy use to achieve sustainability. That does not apply to countries in the imperial periphery, where we know that in most cases, they need to increase their use of energy and resources to build out the infrastructure necessary to ensure good lives for all, right? So that entails aggregate increasing production, in other words, growth. Of course, a socialist development project in the periphery, like in China now, should not target growth for its own sake, but should target the necessary forms of production for human well-being. And right now, in most global south countries, that would entail an aggregate increase in production. So that's the key, I think. I think that the socialism is the main objective here, and should be our rallying cry.
So full-time work feeds overproduction and overconsumption, which in turn drive carbon emissions and resource depletion, while part-time work aligns with degrowth. It reduces output, it lowers energy demand, and it frees people to pursue non-consumerist activities and forms of meaning. So why is it hard for many people to enjoy freedom? Could it be because we haven't really been free and masters of our time since childhood? I mean, from the age of 6, we start schools, we are on schedule, we get used to authority telling us what to do, doing tasks that we'd probably rather not be doing. So in that same pattern, like schedule, authority, repetitive tasks, it repeats when we get a job, when we finish school. And some people are lucky to get interesting jobs. I did have some interesting jobs, like when I was teaching English in Croatia, I was just talking to people. And also in one call that was actually call center, but the job was pretty interesting and offered variety, but it was stressful. So yeah, they were literally on purpose burning us out, and they were like squeezing life and health out of us. So yeah, we had to solve problems, like complicated problems, for 2 clients at the same time, communicating with 2 clients at the same time, which is ridiculous. And then they also try to keep you scared of losing your job and make you feel replaceable. spreading fear has always been the best way to keep people obedient and under control, and it's so easy to do to people. But there is nothing really to be afraid of. For most of human history, there were no jobs. Hunters and gatherers some 300,000 years ago, they survived by sharing and reciprocity within the group. They didn't have money. And some anthropologists call them the original affluent society. So they actually worked fewer hours than modern humans. And there was no loneliness, I guess, and no isolation. My grandparents had no jobs. My grandpa had a job for 4 years collecting taxes, but then he went to a bar and spent all the money he collected, and he spent a few years in jail. My other grandparents, they had some land, not much, and never more than 2 cows, a couple of pigs and chickens and geese. And they built their house from hay and mud. That house held for about 100 years. They had a wooden stove that was enough to keep the house warm, and they cooked on it. And so they only had 1 bedroom and the kitchen, and there was no bathroom, but they didn't know they were poor. They didn't know that they were supposed to have a bathroom. It was a standard in their village. So we're all trained and conditioned since a very young age to work and to obey and not to be free. And the ruling elites that have always lived comfortably with plenty of free time to do whatever they wanted, to do whatever they tickled their imagination, they didn't feel the need to be employed to feel useful. They were leaving the work to the slaves and peasants, who were, by the way, forced into wage slavery after the aristocrats and the elite stole their land, which was called enclosures. And it was happening between 16th and 19th century. And Karl Marx called these enclosures similar acts of stealing or dispossession. Marx called it primitive accumulation. So that was basically the violent process of separating people from their means of subsistence, so they couldn't survive on their own anymore, and they had to sell their labor to live. That's how the working class was born, with stealing. So enclosures were, the original theft that created capitalism. And there were other big thefts, like in South America, especially the Andes. The Spanish exploited silver mines like Potosí in Bolivia. So indigenous people and the African slaves, they were forced into brutal labor. And this massive theft of silver financed European Industrial Revolution. And it financed the growth of capitalism. So the ruling classes always needed us to be obedient, hardworking slaves. So it's not in human nature, like this rich guy claims in this video that made me want to punch him.
How much free time is good? How much free time is bad? Here's what you realize. People need 2 hours of free time. Why? To be able to go out there and do their, your chores, pay the bills, go get the haircut, go do the shop and all this other stuff. If it's less than 2 hours of free time a day, they have stress and anxiety. It's not good for them.
Gotcha.
So you got an hour and a half lunch and you got an hour at night. That's 2.5 hours. She said the moment it went to 5 hours of free time, stress and anxiety went up. Why? Because you started realizing, am I not valued? Am I not important? Can you not use me to do productive things? People want to be valued. If they're not being used to be valued, they see themselves as, I'm worthless. Mm-hmm. I don't feel that good. I become bitter. I have an attitude.
I understand that capitalists don't want their slaves to have an attitude, but come on, lunch and 1 hour free in the evening? The capitalists try and manage to convince the working class that our lives are not important, that we're only here to serve them and contribute to their wealth. And they manage to brainwash us with this bullshit. No, my life is important to me. I don't need to be a servant to a capitalist to feel useful. So for this guy, free time is time to run chores like haircut, shopping, paying bills. That's not free time. Real free time begins after you take care of the household chores and errands you have to run. And this guy claims that more than 5 hours of free time creates stress because people feel worthless if they're not being put to productive use. Just like those indigenous people in Bolivia, they just wanted to be put to productive use. They were bored and purposeless before the Spanish conquered them. Yeah, right. This idea is obviously the product of capitalist conditioning. So, yeah, the ruling elites for centuries then drilled into us this belief that our worth comes from utility to others, from how much labor we give. Bullshit. Purpose is not something that employment gives you. It's something that you find in freedom, through self-realization, doing the work you choose, that you like, discovering your talents through exploration, experimentation, following your curiosity, your joy, your excitement. It is true that many people today feel restlessness with a lot of free time, but I don't think that's because humans can't handle leisure. It's because we have been trained from school to workplace to always be under external discipline. So we are like birds raised in cages who panic when the door opens instead of just flying out. It doesn't mean that we should only have 2 hours of time for chores and stay in our cages. We have to learn how to fly. We have to know what to do when the cage door opens, or we have to learn how to open the cage doors. So what this video really reveals is not the truth about human nature, but just about capitalist ideology. So elites want us to believe that a few scraps of free time are enough and that too much freedom is dangerous. But what the truth is that humans flourish when we have control over our time. Some numbers even show that employees, on average, they live like about 10 years less than their superiors who have more control over their time. And yeah, if we reject consumerism and we have modest needs, part-time work should be enough to support us. And I don't mean 30 hours part-time, I mean maximum 20 hours a week. That's a part-time work. And the rest we can do whatever we want and what really matters, not just serving the dreams of capitalists, having our own dreams and projects.